The first crack in my world didn't come with shouting or slammed doors. It came with one simple sentence. Ryan needs a place to stay for a while. Claire stood across the kitchen, still wearing her office clothes. She didn't sound nervous. She didn't even sound uncertain. She spoke as if she had already decided, and I only needed to hear the news. My fork stopped halfway to my mouth. The dinner I had spent an hour cooking filled the room with the smell of garlic and herbs, but neither of us had touched it. I searched her face, hoping there was more to the conversation. A while. She slipped her phone into her pocket and leaned against the counter. He lost his apartment. His landlord sold the building. He doesn't have anyone else. The words landed softly. Their weight did not. Ryan, her ex-boyfriend, the man she hadn't talked about in years. At least, that's what I believed. I forced a small smile. There are hotels. He can't afford one. What about his friends? Claire let out a tired breath. You know how people disappear when someone needs help. I waited. She didn't ask what I thought. She didn't ask if I was comfortable. She had already made the decision. I already told him he can use the spare room. The room suddenly felt smaller. So, he's coming? He'll be here tonight. I looked down at the dinner. Steam no longer rose from the plates. The food was getting cold, just like every evening we'd shared for the last few months. Work had become Claire's whole world. Late meetings, missed dinners, weekend calls. I kept telling myself it was only a busy season. Love changes. People get tired. Relationships become quieter. That was what I repeated whenever I ate alone. Whenever another message arrived, saying she'd be late. Whenever another anniversary plan became next weekend. Patience, I believed, was another way of saying love. Maybe I had been wrong. You could have talked to me first. I knew you'd understand. She smiled, not because I agreed, because she expected me to. A knock echoed through the apartment. Claire walked to the door before I could move. Ryan stepped inside, carrying 2 duffel bags. His smile was easy. Ethan, he held out a hand. I know this is awkward. I shook it anyway. His grip was warm. Mine wasn't. Claire took one of his bags before he could stop her. You don't have to carry everything yourself. She laughed when he tried to take it back. It was a light laugh. A laugh I hadn't heard in months. Ryan looked around the apartment. Nice place. It took a lot of work. The words left my mouth before I realized how much they meant. Every shelf, every picture, every piece of furniture. Claire and I had built this home together. Now another man was standing in the middle of it. Claire pointed toward the hallway. The spare bedroom is ready. Ready. She had already prepared it. Fresh sheets. Clean towels. She had planned everything. Except telling me. Ryan disappeared down the hall. Claire turned toward the kitchen. You don't mind reheating dinner, right? He's probably hungry. I stared at the 2 untouched plates. There had been 3 all along. She had known he was coming before I even walked through the front door. You planned this before today. She hesitated for only a second. I wanted to make sure everything worked out first. Everything. Except us. That night became strangely quiet. Ryan unpacked while Claire helped him organize the room. I carried the cold dinner into the microwave. The machine hummed louder than anyone spoke. The food tasted different after being reheated. Dry, empty, almost forced. Just like the conversation around the table. Ryan thanked me for dinner. Claire smiled at him. Neither noticed I barely ate. Days slipped by, then another week. Ryan was still there. His shoes rested beside mine, near the front door. His coffee mug sat next to Claire's favorite cup. His jacket hung where mine used to be. Small things. Tiny changes. Each one whispered the same message. You're making room again. Every morning, I gave up another piece. The television, the bathroom schedule, even simple conversations. Claire and Ryan always seemed to have something to discuss. Old memories, college stories, people they both knew. Sometimes I listened. Most times I quietly walked away. One evening, I came home carrying flowers. Not because it was a special occasion, because I wanted one. Claire wasn't in the living room. Neither was Ryan. Their voices drifted from the spare bedroom. The door stood half open. Ryan held up one of my old sweaters. This actually fits. Claire laughed. Keep it. Ethan has too many clothes anyway. She noticed me standing there. The smile faded just enough. Oh, you're home. I looked at the sweater. I've been looking for that. Ryan started pulling it off. No, it's okay. The word surprised even me. Keep it. Claire relaxed. See? I told you he wouldn't mind. Wouldn't mind. That sentence followed me everywhere. You won't mind. You'll understand. You're patient. You're different. I wondered if those words were compliments or excuses. The apartment continued changing. One afternoon, I reached for the framed vacation photo from our trip to the coast. It wasn't there. A different frame stood in its place. Claire, Ryan, Daniel, a group photo from years ago. Our picture had been moved onto a shelf in the hallway. Not thrown away, just moved aside. Like me, that evening I came home earlier than usual. The apartment sounded alive. Real laughter echoed from the kitchen. Not polite laughter. Not tired laughter. Happy laughter. I stopped before turning the corner. Claire leaned against the counter, smiling so hard her eyes nearly closed. Ryan copied one of her old dance moves from college. She laughed again, the same laugh I had missed, the one I kept hoping would return to me. Instead, it had returned to him. I stayed hidden for another moment. Then Ryan spoke softly. You've done more for me than anyone. Claire reached over and squeezed his arm. You'll always have a place with me. Everything inside me froze. She probably meant the apartment. Maybe. But standing there, hearing warmth in her voice that had disappeared from our relationship months ago, I no longer knew whether she meant the house or her heart. The sound of laughter upstairs had become part of my evenings. Not my laughter. Not the kind that once filled our apartment after long days at work. Every night, I unlocked the front door, hoping something had changed. Every night, another small piece of my home felt unfamiliar. Ryan's running shoes rested beside mine. His favorite cereal appeared in the pantry. His coffee mug stayed on the drying rack, always next to Claire's. Mine slowly moved to the edge. It should have been a collection of tiny moments. Instead, they became one long reminder that I no longer came first. One morning, I reached into my closet before work. My favorite gray sweater was gone. I searched every shelf. Nothing. A few minutes later, Ryan walked into the kitchen wearing it. He noticed me staring. Oh, he smiled awkwardly and pulled at the sleeves. I found this folded in the laundry basket. Hope you don't mind. Claire poured coffee into 2 mugs. It looks better on him anyway. She laughed softly. The joke never reached me. It's mine. Ryan immediately started pulling it over his head. I can change. I held up a hand. No. The word came out calm. Keep it. Claire smiled with relief. See? I knew you wouldn't make a big deal out of it. That sentence stayed with me during the drive to work. Wouldn't make a big deal out of it. Every sacrifice became proof that I should sacrifice again. At lunch, I sent Claire a message. Want to have dinner together tonight? Just us. No reply. An hour later, I sent another. Miss you. Still nothing. By the time work ended, both messages remained unread. I slipped my phone into my pocket and convinced myself she was busy. Then my screen lit up. A social media notification. Claire had just commented on Ryan's picture. Hope your interview goes well tomorrow. You got this. She had time for that. Just not for me. When I got home, the lights in the living room were off. The television glowed in the dark. Claire and Ryan sat on the couch watching an old action movie. The blanket I had bought for our movie nights covered both of them, not wrapped around them together, just spread across the couch. Still, something about the picture made my feet stop. Claire glanced over her shoulder. Oh, she muted the television. We're halfway through. Ryan shifted forward, wanting to restart it. I forced a smile. No, you love this movie. I've seen it before. Claire reached for the remote again. We'll watch another one this weekend. This weekend. Another promise. Another delay. I walked into the bedroom alone. The empty side of the bed already knew me better than she did. Days passed. The apartment never felt quiet anymore. Ryan talked. Claire laughed. Doors opened and closed. Music drifted from the spare room. Yet somehow I had never felt more alone. Olivia noticed before I admitted anything. She placed a coffee on my desk during lunch and studied my face. You look exhausted. Busy week. She folded her arms. Try again. A weak smile appeared. Am I that obvious? You've been staring at the same spreadsheet for 10 minutes. I let out a slow breath. My girlfriend let her ex move in. Olivia blinked. I'm sorry, what? I explained everything. The spare bedroom. The late-night movies. The excuses. The forgotten conversations. She stayed quiet until I finished. Then she leaned forward. Ethan, what? You're acting like you're trying to win her back. I already have her. Do you? The question landed harder than any argument. Olivia stirred her coffee. You're not fighting for love anymore. She met my eyes. You're competing for attention inside your own home. I wanted to argue. Instead, I looked down at my untouched sandwich. Because part of me knew she was right. That weekend Daniel came over. Claire's older brother always spoke less than everyone else. He noticed things. Small things. Dangerous things. Ryan greeted him with a hug. Daniel returned it politely. Then his eyes drifted toward me. You doing okay? I'm fine. The answer sounded automatic. Dinner started peacefully. Halfway through the meal, Daniel set down his fork. So, he glanced toward the hallway. How long is Ryan staying? Claire shrugged. As long as he needs. Daniel frowned. You sure that's a good idea? He doesn't have anyone. You have Ethan. Claire sighed. Why is everyone acting like I'm doing something terrible? No one's saying that. Daniel leaned back. I'm just wondering if you've thought about how this feels. Claire folded her arms. Ethan understands. My name hung in the air. Everyone turned toward me. I swallowed slowly. I understand helping people. Claire relaxed. But her smile faded. Helping someone shouldn't cost your relationship. Ryan lowered his eyes. Daniel nodded once. Claire pushed her chair back. You're all making this bigger than it is. She carried her plate into the kitchen. The conversation ended with unfinished food and unfinished thoughts. A few days later, our anniversary arrived. Nothing expensive had been planned. Just dinner. One evening together. She promised weeks ago. I left work early. Bought flowers. Picked up the small chocolate cake from the bakery she loved. For the first time in weeks, I felt hopeful. When I opened the apartment door, the smell of roasted chicken filled the air. Candles burned on the table. My heart lifted. Maybe she remembered. Then Ryan walked into the dining room. He smiled. Perfect timing. Claire stood at the stove. You made it. I held up the flowers. You remembered? She stared at them. A few seconds passed. Then the color disappeared from her face. Oh, the single word answered everything. Ryan glanced between us. What's wrong? Claire covered her mouth. Our anniversary. The flowers suddenly felt heavier. I forgot. I can see that. She stepped closer. Ethan, wait. The chicken sizzled behind her. I've already started dinner. For him. He had a stressful interview. I laughed once. It wasn't funny. I had a relationship. She reached toward my arm. My body moved before my mind did. Her hand caught empty air. I placed the flowers on the table. They're still fresh. Then I walked into the bedroom and closed the door. No shouting. No broken dishes. No dramatic goodbye. The quiet hurt more. Hours later, I couldn't sleep. The apartment had finally become still. I carried my empty glass into the kitchen for water. The counter was cluttered with unopened mail. Without thinking, I started stacking papers into neat piles. Utility bills, insurance forms, bank envelopes. One folder slipped on the floor. Several pages scattered across the tiles. I knelt to pick them up. One document caught my eye. Ryan Brooks. Below his name was our apartment address. Another page showed household account information. Claire's signature. Ryan's signature. Authorized access. I froze. My fingers tightened around the papers. She hadn't only opened our home to him. She had quietly opened our finances too, without ever telling me. The papers stayed in my hands long after midnight. My name appeared on the lease. My money helped pay every monthly bill. Yet Ryan's name sat beside Claire's on a household account I had never agreed to. The apartment felt strangely quiet. Not peaceful, just heavy. Every answer I had been searching for suddenly stood in front of me. This wasn't kindness anymore. This was a choice, and she had never chosen me. I carefully returned every document to the folder exactly as I'd found it. No torn papers. No angry confrontation. No dramatic scene. If Claire wanted secrets, she would keep believing hers were safe. For now, I carried my glass back to the bedroom. Sleep never came. The ceiling stayed dark while memories drifted through my mind. Every missed dinner, every ignored message, every promise moved to another weekend. Every moment I accepted because I believed love required patience. Maybe patience had turned into permission. Morning arrived without rest. Claire smiled while making coffee. You look tired. Didn't sleep much. You've been stressed lately. She handed me a cup. I hope things get better. The words almost made me laugh. She wanted things to get better without changing anything. Ryan walked into the kitchen wearing another one of my t-shirts. Morning. I nodded once. Neither of them noticed how carefully I watched everything now. That evening I opened a new bank account. Only my paycheck would go there. The next morning, I removed my automatic payments from our shared expenses. Every click on the computer felt strangely calm. Not because I enjoyed it, because I had finally stopped arguing with reality. Olivia noticed the change immediately. You look different. I smiled faintly. I finally made a decision. She leaned against my office door. Tell me. I'm leaving. She stayed quiet for a moment. Then she nodded. I've been hoping you'd say that. I kept thinking things would go back to normal. They already have. Her words caught me off guard. What do you mean? This is her normal now. She softened her voice. The question isn't whether she'll change. Her eyes stayed on mine. It's whether you'll keep disappearing while you wait. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. That afternoon, I visited 3 apartment buildings. The first felt too crowded. The second reminded me too much of my current place. The third overlooked a quiet park. Small living room. Simple kitchen. Sunlight through wide windows. No memories waiting inside. I'll take it. The manager smiled and slid the papers across the desk. My signature looked steadier than I expected. Walking back to my car, I realized something. I wasn't running away. I was walking towards somewhere I could finally breathe. Back at the apartment, nothing had changed. Ryan watched television. Claire worked on her laptop. The distance between us stretched wider than the room itself. Dinner's in the oven. Claire barely looked up. I might work late tonight. You've been home all evening. I know. Her eyes remained on the screen. I'm just finishing something. Ryan reached for the remote. Wanted to watch the game? I've got other plans. Neither asked what those plans were. Neither noticed I had already started packing pieces of my life. Over the next few days, I moved slowly. Important documents disappeared from the filing cabinet. Old photo albums went into storage. The watch my father gave me found its way into a lockbox. Small things. Things no one would notice until they were gone. One afternoon, my phone rang. Daniel, got time to meet? We chose a quiet coffee shop across town. He arrived looking uncomfortable, not nervous, ashamed. He wrapped both hands around his coffee before speaking. I owe you an apology. You didn't do anything. I should have paid attention sooner. I waited. He rubbed his forehead. I thought Claire was just trying to help someone. So did I. But helping someone shouldn't mean hurting someone else. The words settled between us. Daniel sighed. I talked to her again. And I told her she's taking you for granted. Hope tried to rise inside me. I pushed it back down. What happened? She thinks everyone's judging her. A bitter smile crossed my face. Is she listening to anyone? He slowly shook his head. Not anymore. He reached across the table. I don't know what you're planning. I haven't decided. That wasn't completely true. I just hope you remember your own worth. I thanked him. As we stood to leave, he stopped beside the door. If you walk away, his voice grew quieter. Don't let guilt make you come back. The drive home felt longer than usual. Not because of traffic, because I already knew what I had to do. That night, I opened my laptop. A blank document waited on the screen. My fingers rested above the keyboard. I wanted to write about betrayal, about anger, about every tear I had swallowed. Instead, another sentence appeared. Claire, I hope one day you understand why I'm leaving. The words kept flowing. I wrote about the nights I waited with cold dinners, the messages that stayed unread, the promises that slowly disappeared, the apartment we built together, the home that stopped feeling like mine. I didn't accuse her of cheating. I didn't need to. Emotional abandonment leaves its own scars. Each paragraph became another goodbye. I thanked her for the good years. I admitted I still loved her. Then I wrote the hardest truth of all. Every time you asked me to understand, I did. Every time I needed the same understanding, you were already giving it to someone else. My vision blurred. I closed the laptop. Not because I had finished, because I couldn't see the screen anymore. The following evening, I printed the letter. 3 pages. No insults. No threats. Just truth. I folded it carefully and slipped it into a plain white envelope. Over the next 2 days, I packed one suitcase. Only the things that truly belonged to me. Clothes, important papers, family photographs, the old baseball glove my father gave me when I was 12. Everything else stayed behind. Before dawn on Saturday, the apartment remained completely still. My suitcase stood beside the front door. The wheels pointed toward a future I couldn't picture yet. I opened my phone. Claire's name filled the emergency contact screen. My thumb hovered above it. For years, she had been the first person anyone would call if something happened to me. Now I wasn't even the first person she came home to. I pressed delete. The screen asked one final question. Are you sure? Yes. The single word escaped into the quiet apartment. The contact disappeared. I carried the suitcase into the kitchen. The envelope rested beside my hand. House keys, garage remote, the letter, everything lined up neatly on the table. I walked to our bedroom one last time. Claire slept peacefully. She had no idea this was our last morning under the same roof. I wanted her to wake up. I wanted her to stop me. I wanted one reason to believe I still mattered. None came, so I quietly closed the bedroom door, picked up my suitcase, placed the sealed letter beside the house keys. Then I walked out of the home I had spent years building, leaving behind everything except the one thing no one could take from me anymore. My self-respect. My phone started ringing before the sun had fully risen. Claire's name filled the screen. Once, twice, 5 times. By the 10th call, the phone stopped feeling like a way to communicate and started feeling like a weight. I turned it over and left it on the kitchen counter of my new apartment. The room was quiet. No television. No laughter drifting from another room. No footsteps that made me feel like a stranger in my own home. Only peace. It still felt unfamiliar. An hour later, another notification appeared. Where are you? A minute later. Please answer me. Then another. I found your letter. I read every message. I answered none of them. She finally had my attention. Not because she was speaking, because I had stopped chasing every word she refused to give me. Work became my refuge. Instead of rushing home every evening, I stayed focused on projects I had ignored for months. My manager noticed the difference. You've been doing great lately. Thanks. There may be a promotion coming up. Months ago, that news would have been the happiest part of my week. Now it simply reminded me how much energy I had wasted trying to save a relationship that only one person wanted to protect. Olivia smiled when she saw me leaving the office on time. Getting used to the new place? It's still quiet. The good kind. I nodded. The kind where nobody makes me wonder if I belong. She bumped my shoulder with a gentle grin. That's progress. Later that evening, I finally listened to one of Claire's voice messages. Her breathing reached me before her words. Ethan, she stopped for a moment. I read your letter. Another pause. I didn't know you felt that alone. The message ended there. No excuses. No explanations. Just unfinished regret. I placed the phone back on the table. Too many conversations had ended halfway between us. This one would stay there too. A week passed. Then another. Daniel called during lunch. You have a minute? Of course. His voice sounded tired. Things are falling apart. I stayed quiet. She read your letter at least 20 times. That surprised me. Ryan moved out yesterday. What happened? Daniel let out a long breath. The bills started coming. I leaned back in my chair. What bills? The electricity, the internet, the rent increase. He laughed bitterly. Turns out you handled more than anyone realized. I closed my eyes. For years, I had quietly paid late fees before Claire even noticed them. Called repairmen, renewed insurance, fixed broken appliances, scheduled appointments, remembered birthdays. Love had become invisible work. Only after I left did anyone notice it had disappeared. Ryan refused to help. Daniel's voice pulled me back. He said none of it was his responsibility. And then he packed his bags. He left. This morning, the call ended with neither of us saying much more. There wasn't much left to say. Reality had finally arrived at the apartment before I ever needed to. A few days later, Margaret called. Claire's mother had always been polite with me. Kind, sometimes distant. Ethan, hello. I hope I'm not bothering you. You're not. Her voice sounded softer than usual. I read your letter. Daniel must have shown it to her. I didn't know. No, I don't think any of us did. She took a slow breath. I kept telling Claire she had such a dependable man. Another pause. I never realized she had started depending on you instead of appreciating you. The sentence stayed with me long after the call ended. Depending, not appreciating. There was a painful difference. Claire continued reaching out. Messages arrived every day. Can we talk? Please let me explain. I'm outside your old apartment. Daniel told me you've moved. One message stayed on my screen longer than the others. I finally noticed your closet. I didn't understand until she sent another. It's empty. That image lingered in my mind. The empty closet. The space where my clothes once hung. The quiet proof that I wasn't coming home. Another week passed before Daniel visited my apartment. He carried a small box. I thought these belonged to you. Inside lay the framed vacation photo that had once sat in our living room. The picture of Claire and me smiling by the ocean. It's gone from the apartment. What replaced it? He hesitated. Nothing. I traced the edge of the frame. No picture. She took the other one down, too. The group photo. The one that quietly replaced ours. Now both were gone. The wall stood empty. Almost like the apartment itself. Daniel reached into his jacket pocket. He placed a key on the table. The landlord needed yours returned. My apartment key. The one I had left beside the letter. Claire had kept it until now. She couldn't return me. Only the metal. I picked it up. It felt surprisingly light. So it's really over. Daniel nodded slowly. I think she's finally starting to believe that. Life continued moving forward. My promotion became official. I bought a bookshelf for my new apartment. Started jogging every morning. Cooked dinner without wondering whether someone would come home. Small victories. Quiet victories. The kind nobody applauds. One evening, Olivia joined me for coffee after work. You smile more now. Do I? Not all the time. She laughed. But enough. I stared through the cafe window. I still think about her. I know. Does that ever stop? Olivia smiled gently. No. She wrapped both hands around her cup. It just stops controlling you. Her words stayed with me. Healing wasn't forgetting. Healing was remembering without falling apart. The next morning, I stepped out of my office building after work. The parking lot shimmered beneath the afternoon sun. A familiar figure stood beside the entrance. Claire. She looked thinner. Her shoulders no longer carried the confidence that once filled every room. The envelope I had left on the kitchen table rested against her chest. Its edges were bent. The paper looked worn from being opened again and again. She saw me. Her fingers tightened around the letter. Neither of us moved. The distance between us was only a few steps. It felt longer than every mile I had traveled since walking out of that apartment. Claire stood outside my office, holding the letter with both hands. The white envelope was no longer white. Its corners were bent. The paper had softened from being opened over and over. She didn't rush toward me. She didn't cry. She simply waited, as if she finally understood that some distances could not be crossed without permission. I've been hoping I'd see you. I stopped a few feet away. You found me. It took a while. A small smile appeared on her face. It disappeared just as quickly. Can we talk? I looked at the street behind her. Cars passed. People hurried home. Life kept moving. There's a coffee shop across the road. She nodded. I'll follow you. We sat by the window. The same kind of table where we had once planned vacations, birthdays, and dreams that never happened. Neither of us touched our drinks. Claire rested the letter on the table between us. I've read this almost every day. I glanced at the envelope. It wasn't easy to write. I know. Her fingers brushed the folded paper. That's why I couldn't stop reading it. The silence wasn't uncomfortable. It gave both of us room to breathe. She finally looked up. I thought loyalty would always be there. My eyes stayed on hers. I never imagined you would leave. I didn't either. That answer seemed to hurt more than anger would have. She lowered her head. I kept telling myself Ryan only needed help. You believe that? I did. She took a slow breath. But I also carried guilt. The words came carefully. When we broke up years ago, I always wondered if I had abandoned him when he needed me most. She rubbed her hands together. My mother spent years telling me that good people don't leave others behind. A weak laugh escaped. I became so busy saving someone from my past that I stopped seeing the person standing beside me. I remember Margaret's phone call, depending instead of appreciating. Everything connected now. You weren't trying to hurt me. No. Her voice trembled. But I hurt you anyway. I nodded once. Every day. She accepted the truth without arguing. I know. Another quiet moment settled between us. Then she reached into her bag. Several papers slid onto the table. I lost my position as project manager. I looked at the documents. The company reviewed the household account. She swallowed hard. They questioned why I added Ryan without reporting the financial connection. What happened? I wasn't fired. A sad smile appeared. But I lost the promotion I'd worked years for. She folded her hands. They said my judgment couldn't be trusted. She wasn't asking for sympathy. She was telling me the cost. My family barely speaks to me. Her voice grew softer. Daniel still checks on me. And your mother? She loves me. A tear slipped down her cheek. But every time she visits, she reminds me that I confused guilt with love. The cafe stayed busy around us. People laughed. Coffee cups clinked together. Our table felt strangely separate from the rest of the room. What about Ryan? She let out a tired breath. He disappeared. I figured. He left after I asked him to start paying bills. Her smile carried more disappointment than anger. He thanked me for everything. Another pause. Then he packed his bags. The story ended exactly how I had expected. He never wanted responsibility, only comfort. Claire reached for the letter again. I blamed him for weeks. She shook her head. Then I realized something. I waited. The biggest mistake wasn't letting him into the apartment. Her eyes filled with regret. It was pushing you out of it. Those words would have meant everything months ago. Now, they simply sounded true. Not powerful, not persuasive, just true. She leaned forward. I know I don't deserve another chance. I remained quiet. But if there is even the smallest part of you. Her voice faded. The sentence never finished. It didn't need to. I understood every missing word. I looked out the window before answering. When I left, the memory returned so clearly. My suitcase stood by the front door. She nodded slowly. I remember. I waited. For what? For you to wake up. Tears rolled down her face. I kept hoping you'd stop me. She covered her mouth. I didn't even know you were leaving. I know. The hardest part wasn't saying the next words. It was knowing they were true. I forgave you. She blinked. You did. A long time ago. Hope flashed across her face. Then I quietly finished. But forgiveness doesn't rebuild trust. The hope disappeared. I understand. I don't hate you. I know. I just can't go back. She closed her eyes. When they opened again, they carried sadness instead of denial. I finally understand the difference. Between what? Being loved? She touched the worn letter, and assuming that love would wait forever. Neither of us spoke after that. Nothing important remained unsaid. Claire carefully folded the letter one last time. Not with desperate hands. With gentle ones. She held it for a few seconds. Then she placed it into the cafe trash bin beside our table. I don't need the paper anymore. Her voice barely rose above a whisper. I'll remember every word. We stood together near the entrance. The afternoon sun warmed the sidewalk. She held out her hand, not asking me to stay, only saying goodbye. I shook it. Her grip trembled. Thank you. The word surprised me. For what? For loving me the right way. She smiled through her tears. I'm sorry I learned that after I lost it. I nodded. Take care of yourself. You too. She walked toward the parking lot without turning around. I watched until she disappeared behind a row of cars. Then I reached into my pocket. My phone unlocked with one touch. Claire's contact still remained. Not because I planned to call, because I had never taken the final step. My thumb rested on her name. This time, there was no hesitation. Delete contact. The screen asked the same question it had weeks ago. Are you sure? Yes. The name disappeared. So did the last open door between us. Months passed. My apartment slowly became a home. The bookshelves filled. Pictures returned to the walls. Not reminders of the past. Memories of a life I was building instead of protecting. Olivia and I spent more time together. Nothing rushed. Nothing forced. We talked, laughed, shared quiet dinners where no one checked the clock or waited for someone else to come home. whether that friendship would become something more no longer mattered as much as one simple truth. I had learned what mutual respect looked like. One evening, I walked through the park outside my apartment. Children played near the fountain. An older couple held hands on a nearby bench. The breeze carried the smell of fresh rain. My phone remained silent. For once, silence wasn't loneliness. It was peace. Sometimes I still remember Claire. Not with anger, not with bitterness, only with the understanding that some people become part of our story without becoming part of our future. She had taught me something I never wanted to learn. Love cannot survive where appreciation disappears, and self-respect cannot grow until fear of losing someone becomes smaller than the fear of losing yourself. I kept walking. The path stretched ahead, bright beneath the evening sky. I never looked back, because the greatest revenge was never destroying her future. It was refusing to let her destroy mine any longer.